Manifest Dread is a brilliant mechanic, one strong enough that it sees play even outside of the Morph ecosystem of decks, and yet one of the strongest Dread manifestors doesn't see a huge amount of play. Strange, but I am to rectify that. Valgavoth's Onslaught is a sorcery for green XX, which has you manifest Dread X times and then put X +1/+1 counters on each of those manifests. Very simple, but in that simplicity lies some serious oomph. For example, at its base rate, X equals 1, you look at the top two cards of your library, dump one into grave, and you put one onto the battlefield as a 3/3, which is already decent for 3 mana, but then you get to the higher X amounts, and that's when this card really starts to pop off. For example, at X equals 4, you get 24 power across 4 bodies, and you dump 4 cards into the grave, with a degree of selection which may seem minor, but which gives it a significant amount of utility compared to your standard old mill. But you may be thinking, okay, that's good and all, but for X to be 4, you need to be paying 9 mana. Why not just slam a Rise of the Dark Realms or something? And that is a good point. There are better generic options at pretty much each X cost. However, there are a few factors that make this thing into a more appealing option across a wide variety of decks. It's flexible, and it feels good to cast at any level, with the card only getting better the more mana you pump into it. 120 power and better mill 10 at X equals 10 is one hell of a playmate. 2. You're in green. Getting to absurd amounts of mana is a piece of cake, and so playing a high mana utility spell is far less daunting in this card's colour. 3. Commander games go on far longer than people think. At a more casual table, looking at your brackets 1 to 3, your high mana cards don't have to auto-win to be playable. 4. Frankly, it's novel and interesting. A lot of overpowered cards and win cons, like slamming an Emrakul, an Expropriate, or an Entwined Tooth and Nail grabbing an Infinite, are just so dull, and it's in a way that this really isn't. And 5, and possibly most importantly, this card gets far better in a deck that supports its playstyle. Just a couple of synergy pieces alongside this bad boy can make it go wild. And talking about synergies, what actually are the decks that this wants to go into? Well, just to get the obvious ones out of the way, this of course loves to be played in face-down creature decks like Yaris and Kadena, and X-Spell decks like Zaxara and Rasheen. And this is for obvious reasons, right? The face-down decks love making the most out of the sudden board of manifests by buffing and or flipping them, and the X-Spell decks love to squeeze as much juice out of the X cost as possible, maximising the amount of mana that can be pumped into this thing. But what else does this want to go in? Well, for one thing, +1/+1 counter decks love this. Just a single Corpsejack Menace or Doubling Season cracks it in half, and really anything that buffs cards with counters like Abzan Falconer and Herald of Secret Streams can turn the dial up to 11. In particular, Onslaught excels in the kind of counters decks that go wide, like Hamza and Tanazir, and ones that play out of the graveyard, like Varol's, Gave, and really any partner deck involving Rayhan. As for other archetypes that love to play with this thing, anything that's Delirium adjacent can also very easily play Onslaught. Whether it be commanders that actually have Delirium, like Winter, or just complement the playstyle, like Muldrotha, the extra card selection on this card's milling effect makes filling your grave with multiple different card types a cinch. Indeed, I play this in my Disa the Restless deck, and let me tell you, it does a fantastic job of making them goyfs unreasonably enormous. Though, amusingly enough, it also works really well on the flip side of this coin, that being decks that want a lot of one specific card type in the grave, with decks that want big bodies and yards full of creatures like Gerard and Stickfingers being especially fond of this effect. And for a final commander of particular note, Sasaya Orochi Ascendant is also a fantastic place to slot this card in as well. Admittedly, any big mana green deck, along the lines of OG Omnath and Patron of the Orochi, love winning with absurd X costs. But Sasaya in particular loves this card, as that deck often plays upwards of 60 forests in order to flip Sasaya consistently, and this card gives you something to do with that ridiculous number of lands, especially when Sasaya is an enchantment. It doesn't matter if you manifest Dread a tree, it'll smack your opponent's 7 ways to Sunday regardless. And in conclusion, Valgavoth's Onslaught may not be your best generic haymaker or utility piece, but that doesn't matter when your graveyard is full and the Magus Lucia Kane player has obliterated your kneecaps with a huge pile of 10/10s, and personally, I think that's beautiful.